Still getting over this. I've been thinking a lot. I think I've got the inputs and outputs of the kitchen sink figured out. So we'll have these little USB on-the-go connectors. They're these little kind of naked connectors that consist of a reduced female USB type A to a USB micro, and it actually fits in the end of a USB type A. So that gives me two connections immediately. One, you can connect the keyboard directly to your phone, and two, you can connect it directly to your Raspberry Pi that will be on board. As far as battery pack and power direction, the battery pack will have a selection I guess it kind of needs an off. The battery pack will have a selection for powering either the Bluetooth adapter or the Raspberry Pi. So you'll have a regular keyboard, and I haven't made the decision to do input switching electronically yet. So the keyboard itself will have the Arduino built into it, along with the OLED and the rotary encoder dial, probably a buzzer as well, and maybe connection points for a vibrating motor. So that will be the entirety of the keyboard, and the Arduino will probably be on a powered switch. So you'll just have a regular keyboard. It'll plug into your computer, and you can turn off and on the Arduino OLED components to it. Where it gets tricky is if you take that cable that's coming out of the keyboard and plug it directly into the external access for the USB or for the Bluetooth connector. So the body of the keyboard will have two connectors on it, externally facing. All of the Raspberry Pi stuff will be on the top side, and then the Bluetooth adapter will either be, sure if it's going to be flat or vertically mounted. I haven't taken it out of its housing yet. I haven't decided how it's going to mount, but originally the idea is to remove it from its housing, and I'm talking about the handheld scientific Bluetooth adapter. Remove it from its housing and then slide it into place, so that it will connect to a female USB connector, which has power switching from the Bluetooth or from the battery charger. So you will be able to charge your keyboard, charge the battery, and then at any point flip that battery so that it's powering the USB, or rather, so that the battery is powering the Bluetooth adapter, or that it's powering the Raspberry Pi. And then once either of those has power, you can connect your keyboard directly to it using that USB OTG adapter to plug into the Raspberry Pi's device input, or to plug into the, yeah, that's right, or the regular Type A coming out of the keyboard to plug directly into the Bluetooth adapter. Eventually, I would like to be able to have that input switched. So that you flip a switch to direct the output of the keyboard. Yeah. I'm also going to have mount points for a USB micro or USB mini connector. That'll be probably surface mount. That way the cable can be disconnected or attached and wrapped around, because the cable is going to be used to direct input back into itself for the kitchen sink for the other devices that are powered on it. I'm curious to know if it would be okay to switch between. I'm not even sure which poles you would switch, because I wouldn't want to have separate power connectors, separate power sources or different power sources. If the Raspberry Pi is connected to the battery and getting power from that, it needs a shared ground with the keyboard. So the keyboard can't be like, I don't know, somehow connected to the computer and sending input, or rather charging from the computer and sending input. The other thing is the charging. I'm rather interested to know if or rather how fast the charging circuit, and it's just using a what is it? Charge Boost, the Adafruit 1 milliamp or 1000 milliamp charger. It's like the Power Boost 1000 or something like that. But it does charge with it does charge while providing power. So the possibility of plugging in the keyboard to use it on a computer regularly as you would a normal keyboard, I'd like that to be able to be sufficient to power the keyboard and also to charge the circuit. I don't really anticipate getting a lot of amps to the charging circuit, but I'd also prefer that everything be USB micro anyways. Because if it were, then you would just have one cable, and yeah, you would kind of want that external facing too. So the battery, yeah, the charging circuit could receive input voltage shared from the keyboard's power. So if the keyboard's being plugged in, we can see how many milliamps you get to charge the battery. These are also useful LEDs that should be displayed on the outside, or on the top side rather. I'm not sure how well that's going to work. They should probably be shorted to a position on the kitchen sink and then just rerouted, probably down to like the bottom of the keyboard closest to you. So when you look down at it, you've got a sandwich style build with an open side, and then you'll have your LEDs at the bottom there. That way they'll be somewhat visible, at least more visible than directly underneath the top of the keyboard. So you'll be able to, should be able to, plug your keyboard directly into a computer and use it normally. Hoping, yeah, that's the other thing, to be able to use the keyboard and charge the battery and run the Arduino and OLED. Like I said, we'll see how many milliamps it really gets. But I mean, if you're using your computer, you're using your keyboard all day and it takes 8 hours to charge, who cares? You would also be able to, if you're not using the keyboard and you want to charge the battery, unplug the USB micro directly from the keyboard input and plug it directly into the charging circuit. That way you'd get straight amperage directly to the charging circuit, so it can charge the battery directly. Then, once the battery's charged, then once the battery's charged, you can take the keyboard, plug it into the Bluetooth adapter, and put battery power, switch on battery power to the Bluetooth adapter, and you've got your Bluetooth keyboard. Huh. Wonder how much rollover it gets. That sounds like that needs to be tested. It's probably 6, which is just fine, but it's not N-key rollover. Yeah. Or you can flip the battery power over to the Raspberry Pi and then plug the keyboard into the Raspberry Pi as an input device. And then you can, you know, either plug in an HDMI port for a display on the Raspberry Pi. That should have enough power to run it. I should really test the draw on a QMK or Easy AVR, any of these custom firmwares. I know they're not really optimized for Bluetooth, but whatever. What I would really like to do, and what I've been thinking a lot about, is make something as impressive and solid as this case. Just really, and I know that doesn't come cheap, and that's not even an easy thing to do. None of this is easy, whatever. But I would really like to have a case like that that had all of this in it. Because the objective, and I realized this moderately recently, the objective has just been to carry less stuff. When I started thinking about building the Arduino and the OLED display into my notebook face, which, you know, the cover's rigid, it would probably fit. Then I could have a little display and maybe a little tiny vibrator motor and a buzzer, little speaker. The objective is just to carry less stuff. I'm already carrying or planning on carrying a keyboard around. You know, the more utility I fit into the keyboard, the more of a necessity it would be. Therefore, the more I put into that package, into what I'm already carrying around, the less I have to carry around, and the more concise everything is, the more together everything is. I'm not a particularly conscientious person, and my mind's always everywhere, so I tend to forget things almost immediately. So if I want to remember things, I like to make it physically impossible to forget them. So aggregation of things that I need is important, is useful. And aside from that, it's just makes my life easier, make everyone's life easier. And who wouldn't want, you know, even if it's just version 1 is just a keyboard that has a Bluetooth adapter in it. And that Bluetooth adapter is very nice and very well featured. And it's also $37, which I'm cheap, but if I'm honest, it's a steal. It's still a great piece of hardware. Particularly the USB through throughput. I don't know I forget what they called it, but it's like a USB to USB adapter. If you plug it directly into your keyboard and then plug your keyboard into it and then plug it into your computer, where you're using it not as a Bluetooth adapter but as a USB through device, you get the features that the USB Bluetooth device has in macros and key assignments. You can use that thing to switch your keyboard to Dvorak, and you can reassign keys and build macros and make little sleep functions so that the keyboard sends a key every X minutes or so. So there's cool features just in that. The idea is to make this so that it supports the Bluetooth adapter and supports the Raspberry Pi Zero, but that you don't necessarily have to buy it right at that point. You know, it supports the OLED, it supports the Arduino, and then you can build it up over time. Just be like, this is my keyboard, it's got custom, you know, switch positions, which I've redone to be 1/8 U, which makes things a lot easier. Definitely getting better at this. It's easier to work with, but I want to make a case for it. After it's, you know, ready, I'm going to want to build a case around it so that it's tight and secure like this. That thing's almost too tight. The idea is that you could get it and have the keyboard and customize it and be like, this is neat. And then later on be like, you know what? I think I want to add Bluetooth to this keyboard. So you buy the base to it and the standoffs, and you attach the base to it, and you solder a few points. We'll probably use header pins, actually. And then sandwich it together and buy your Bluetooth adapter and slide it in, and boom. And the battery and the charger. But yeah, you add battery power to it, add the Bluetooth adapter, and there you go. Your same keyboard that you're working with, that's customized for your use, and your hands and your fingers now has Bluetooth ability. And it should charge as you use it while it's plugged in, which is pretty cool. And then later, if you go, hey, you know, I really could use an Arduino Zero on this, Raspberry Pi Zero plugged into this, and you go buy a $10 Raspberry Pi Zero, and you solder it in so that it's on the power points, and then you solder in your little flip switch. There you go. And then more features later, I guess. So that's what I'm working on. Aside from trying to fit an OLED in here and a little battery. Just using a stopwatch, like a very large displayed stopwatch to measure my, gotta go. To measure the time I spend on things has been helpful. Back in the workflow version of this productivity camp. I feel like I'm rambling now, and I should probably stop talking. GG.